FIFA's official record for South Korea versus Czechia in Guadalajara said the stadium was 98% full. The broadcast footage said something different. That specific contradiction, not the broader question of ticket prices, not the philosophical argument about who the World Cup is for, but this precise, verifiable gap between an official number and what every television in the world was showing, is what this examination is about. Start with the official figure. FIFA declared an attendance of 44,985 for the match at Estadio Akron in Guadalajara. The venue's World Cup capacity is 45,664. By FIFA's accounting, fewer than 700 seats were unoccupied across the entire ground. The cameras, broadcasting the match to a global audience, showed sustained stretches of empty red seating in multiple sections throughout the 90 minutes. Not a handful of latecomers, not isolated gaps. Visible, continuous, section-level vacancies in a stadium that FIFA's official record placed at near capacity. One major publication described the images as a humiliation within hours of the final whistle. That word circulated widely. The images did not need commentary to generate a reaction. They were their own argument. There are two possible explanations for what the cameras showed in Guadalajara. The first is that FIFA's official figure is accurate, and the empty sections visible throughout the broadcast belong to ticket holders who were physically inside the ground but not occupying their seats for extended periods across the full duration of the match. The second is that the official figure and the visual evidence are counting different things. Tickets allocated versus supporters actually seated, and FIFA's number reflects one measure while the cameras capture the other. FIFA's methodology has always been based on allocation. A ticket that has been assigned, sold, transferred, or distributed counts toward the official total regardless of whether the person who received it entered the stadium. The gap between allocation and attendance is real. It is structural. It is also how FIFA has reported crowd figures at every World Cup in the modern era. This is not a 2026 invention. The pattern has appeared at every recent major tournament. At the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, visible empty sections at multiple group stage matches prompted FIFA to commission a formal inquiry. Their conclusion attributed the discrepancy to corporate ticket holders, government allocations, and overseas supporters who had purchased tickets but did not travel. The allocated count was reported as accurate. The visible attendance was lower. In Russia in 2018, the Egypt versus Uruguay fixture at Ekaterinburg Arena carried an official attendance of 27,015 in a stadium with capacity of 33,061. FIFA acknowledged the gap to The Guardian and indicated they were examining contributing factors. Qatar 2022 was reported by FIFA as entirely sold out across all matches. The Athletic documented significant visible vacancies at multiple fixtures, including the final between Argentina and France. The pattern is consistent across 4 consecutive tournaments. FIFA counts allocated tickets. The cameras count occupied seats. The two numbers have rarely aligned perfectly, and FIFA's official figure has routinely been the larger one. What makes 2026 different is not the structural methodology. It is what the methodology is concealing in this specific tournament context. At previous editions, the gap between official figures and visible attendance was primarily explained by the mechanics of distribution. Corporate partners who receive allocations as part of commercial arrangements, government dignitaries who were assigned seats, overseas supporters who purchased tickets for matches they ultimately couldn't attend due to travel complications. The underlying demand existed. The tickets had been sought. The people had intended to come. Circumstances intervened. At the 2026 World Cup, the documented record of the past 6 months raises a different question. Were significant numbers of tickets allocated to people or organizations who were never likely to attend in the first place? Between October 2025 and April 2026, FIFA increased prices for more than 90 of the 104 matches by an average of 34%. In the weeks immediately before the tournament, those prices were quietly reduced and FIFA returned 70% of its block book hotel inventory across major host cities. On the day before the opening ceremony, 25,000 tickets remained available through FIFA's own platform. For certain matches, particularly those involving nations whose supporters faced travel restrictions to the United States. Available inventory was still counted in thousands approaching kickoff. Lower bowl seats at the Guadalajara fixture were priced at $500. Upper-tier sideline positions were $400. For a group stage match between South Korea and Czechia, two nations without established large traveling supporter communities, at those price points, in a city that requires significant logistical effort to reach from either country's major population centers, the no-show rate was not a surprise to anyone who examined the conditions in advance. The empty sections that appeared most prominently in Guadalajara were concentrated in the premium areas, the VIP zones, the hospitality sections, the sideline upper tier. These are the parts of stadiums allocated primarily to commercial partners, corporate hospitality packages, and FIFA's own organizational network. At a group stage match between two nations with modest diaspora presences in North America, the corporate and institutional ticket holders who receive allocations through commercial arrangements had minimal incentive to use them. The seats were counted. The bodies were absent. Now move to the other three opening fixtures, because the full picture across those first four matches is considerably more nuanced than Guadalajara alone. Match 1. Mexico versus South Africa at the Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. Official attendance 80,824 in a venue with World Cup capacity of 83,025, a fill rate of approximately 97%. The visual evidence matched the figure. The stadium looked full, sounded full, and delivered the atmospheric quality that a World Cup opening at that specific ground was supposed to produce. The noise was extraordinary. The Azteca, for the third time hosting a tournament opener, responded with everything its history and its crowd had to give. This was the advertisement for the tournament made real. Match 3. Canada versus Bosnia and Herzegovina at BMO Field in Toronto. The first men's World Cup match ever played on Canadian soil. The official capacity for the venue in this configuration is 45,500. The atmosphere, by multiple accounts from journalists present, was unlike anything previously experienced at a Canadian football match. The lower sections were dense with orange-clad supporters who had been building toward this moment since Canada's last World Cup appearance in Mexico in 1986. For decades of patience producing a single collective noise in a stadium that every camera showed as full. The contrast with Guadalajara was visible not just in what the images showed, but in what they communicated. Both venues were reporting near-capacity official figures. Only one of them looked like it. Match 4. United States versus Paraguay at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Official attendance 68,576 in a venue with World Cup capacity of 69,000. The sections that were occupied were genuinely, audibly full. The American supporter base that has been developing authentic football culture over 30 years showed up for the match their country had been building toward since the hosting announcement. There was also, in the days before the fixture, a vote by Unite Here Local 11, the union representing approximately 2,000 workers at SoFi, to authorize a strike action. No strike was called. The match was staffed and ran without operational disruption. The workers who served 68,000 fans through that fixture still do not have a completed contract. FIFA has not issued a public statement about their situation. For matches, two patterns: when a host nation is involved, when the crowd is composed of supporters for whom this tournament represents a personally significant event happening on their own soil, the stadiums reflect that investment in noise, in visual density, in the quality of atmosphere that broadcasts communicate naturally. When two nations without significant North American diaspora communities play a group stage fixture priced at premium entertainment rates in a secondary host city, the gap between allocated tickets and occupied seats becomes visible to a global broadcast audience, and FIFA declares the venue nearly full. That gap, not the aggregate totals across 104 matches, but this specific gap in specific fixtures, is the 2026 World Cup in a compressed form. The tournament functions where it was always structurally positioned to function. Host nation matches, major market cities, fixtures drawing on established diaspora communities already resident in North America. It underperforms where the barriers were always going to be highest. Supporters from nations facing travel restrictions, expensive tickets in venues requiring expensive travel to reach, group stage matches between nations with modest traveling supporter infrastructure priced at levels calibrated to the ceiling of commercial extraction rather than the breadth of actual demand. FIFA's aggregate official figures at the end of the group stage will almost certainly present a tournament that appears broadly well attended. The packed opening ceremony crowds, the full host nation fixtures, the SoFi Stadium numbers will absorb the Guadalajara vacancies within a larger total that reflects genuine enthusiasm at genuinely attended games. Infantino will be able to reference those totals and make a credible case that the tournament succeeded commercially. The cameras, however, will have told a different story across specific fixtures, section by section, premium area by premium area. The $500 lower bowl seat in Guadalajara with nobody in it. The VIP zone visible on camera with its rows of red unoccupied chairs. The available inventory that was sitting on FIFA's own platform the day before a match FIFA was simultaneously describing as among the most demanded in football history. FIFA spent months telling the world that demand for this tournament ran 10 times any previous edition. The cameras in Guadalajara showed something that 10 times demand does not produce. And the cameras, unlike official attendance figures, do not have a methodology that can be adjusted between what was allocated and what was present. 2 questions worth putting to you. When FIFA issues an official attendance figure of 98% capacity and the visual evidence in the broadcast suggests something materially different, which account shaped your understanding of what actually happened in that stadium. And looking ahead at the remaining group stage fixtures, do you think Guadalajara represents an outlier in this tournament? A specific combination of teams, prices, and location that produced a one-time visible anomaly, or the early expression of a pattern we will keep watching in stadiums across 3 countries over the next 5 weeks?